I wasn't always going to not vaccinate. I'm the mom, and I get to decide because I carry the baby. The Sanctity of Blood by Dr. Tim O'Shea. I came across a book called the Vaccine Safety Manual. Basic immunity-building things that I've been told were causing harm. And so when I looked at some of these vaccines and I saw side effects were leukemia. And that's where it started. And we went to the hospital when I was delivering, and the doctors came in and I said, I'm not getting the vitamin K shot. They immediately start to tell me that your child's brain is going to bleed to death. And that's not the case. And in some instances, that may happen to a child, but that's not the regular case. And that upset me. And a new mom with all my hormones going and a lack of sleep and this newness of this child that I'm going to be leaving the hospital with any minute now, and I can't believe they're letting me take her with me.
As far as the doctor's reactions are concerned, I only have your word to go by on what the doctor's reaction really was when you refused the vitamin K shot for your daughter. You admit that you were sleep deprived and stressed, and you have already shown a propensity to distrust medical professionals, so I tend to assume that you are exaggerating somewhat. But even if you are not, their frustration with you is totally understandable.
Glenn's normal. Missing her vaccination dates.
We're not vaccinating. Gribbit. Gribbit. Gribbit.
Think they don't work?
I think some multinational pharmaceutical company wants me to think they work. Pad their bottom line.
Vitamin K deficiencies are extremely common in newborn babies. The chance of a brain bleed is only about 0.25% for the first few days, but think about how many babies are born in some larger hospitals. 1 out of every 400 can mean that anyone who works on the delivery ward will see at least one preventable brain bleed within their first year. It is not super common, but when it does happen, it almost always leads to death, with a small minority surviving with severe brain damage.
Vitamin K is used by the body to form clots and to stop bleeding. When babies are born, they have a very little storage of vitamin K in their bodies. This also means that when babies are born, they are far more likely to hemorrhage than an adult. In other words, giving babies the vitamin K shot is necessary to prevent your baby from bleeding out if it attains a wound of some kind. Vitamin K deficiency in babies can be lethal. About 1 out of 5 babies, in other words, 20% of babies with vitamin K deficiency die. Not giving your baby the vitamin K shot is beyond idiotic. The reason that babies are born with so little vitamin K in their blood is because vitamin K can't actually cross the border through the placenta to the fetus in utero. Now, some people who oppose giving their baby a vitamin K shot have the misconception that they can simply just increase the vitamin K in their breast milk by simply eating healthy. And although you can indeed increase the vitamin K levels of your breast milk to some degree, you can never increase it to such a level where it's going to be comparable to the shot. So what exactly are the risks of getting a vitamin K shot? Well, in some cases you can have a little bit of pain or even bruising or swelling at the place where the shot is given. There are very few cases where there is some scarring on the site of the injection. And there has been only one single case ever in medical history of an allergic reaction in an infant when it was given the vitamin K shot. So let me just summarize. Give your baby the goddamn vitamin K shot, you selfish bitch.
It was this feeling that came over me of, so you're not for me raising my child, you're for me being a woman of fear.
Oh, what is that? Reality scares you? Oh no! Well, then I guess the doctors should just lie to you and tell you are making the right decision. Because your feelings about your stupid decisions are much more important than the consequences of your stupid decisions.
You have cancer. It is a treatable kind, but we need to start right away.
Why are you trying to make me a woman of fear? Your tub inlet is leaking. It is a lot of work to fix it, but if we do not start now, irreparable damage will be done to your foundation.
Why are you trying to make me a woman of fear?
They are for you making sure your child has the best chance of survival. The vitamin K injection entails almost no risk, far less risk than the 1 in 400 that I mentioned earlier, and refusing it against medical advice is Darwin Award level stupidity. They are not trying to scare you because they want to take away your rights as a mother.
They are frustrated with you because you are a negligent parent.
It does not matter your intentions or how much you love and want the best for your daughter. By denying her proper medical care, you are a negligent parent.
Perhaps an analogy might clarify things for you. Imagine you have a friend who decided that it is safer to drive without having her young child restrained by a seatbelt. Not only that, but she criticizes your parenting because you chose to use seatbelts, citing anecdotes where a malfunctioning seatbelt or some sort of unusual circumstances caused a belted child to die, or an unbelted child had been thrown clear of a wrecked car without any injury.
Imagine your frustration when your friend dismisses any stories of people dying in minor accidents due to not wearing a seatbelt. How irritated would you be when she scoffs at studies showing the decades of data showing that seatbelts save lives?
Let's pretend that you are an automotive safety engineer. Your career has been focused on understanding the science of car crashes. You are an expert in physics and in what makes car crashes more survivable. You have a better understanding of how safe and reliable and absolutely necessary seatbelts are than 99.999% of the people you meet every day. However, despite all of your efforts, your friend, who lacks even the most jejune understanding of automotive physics and design, remains steadfast in her belief that her Google searches and a handful of fake experts writing books about corporate cover-ups and inaccurate statistics outclasses all of your knowledge and experience. How would you feel knowing that a child needlessly died because someone stubbornly refused to trust your expertise?
Now imagine you are an accident investigator or a trauma room surgeon, and you have to constantly talk to parents that do not listen to your educated and well-founded advice, and you are left watching preventable deaths of children every day. Are you starting to see why doctors might have been a little short with you when you refused the vitamin K injection?
I get home and we decided I'm going to look more into it because I don't want to be foolish in my decision. I want to be smart.
It's a little late for that, I'm afraid.
And I started getting every book and every article that I could find, and then I asked peers. I, at the time, was going to school for nutrition, and I was amongst many doctors all the time in my schooling.
Do you mean doctors like your husband, the chiropractor, or O'Shea, the chiropractor, or Miller, the guy who wrote a book? Because you do not strike me as someone who has learned much about medical science.
And I would go to them and I would say, do you have sources? Do you have education for me that I can look up, that I can read, that I can make my own decision? And I got hooked. What upset me was also being a new mom, you want support around you. And being that we have social media everywhere, I went onto a site and there's a plethora of groups for moms and moms-to-be and parenting and what kind of parent do you want to be. And the majority of what I found was kids were being drugged up across the board. If they have a fever, you don't just give them acetaminophen or ibuprofen. Now you make a cocktail and you give them both at separate hours and you can get away with that. And kids that have colic, you're giving them, prescription medication drugs that were never intended for kids at that age. But it's been, okay, well, you can give it to them and they're not getting better. And it leads them from one thing to the next to the next. So it starts out with colic and then it moves on to stomach issues and then it moves on to, the next thing down the road. And then these kids are just consistently drugged.
Wow, there is a lot to unpack here. First off, colic is not treated with medication. There is no medication that is safe and effective against colic. The primary recommended treatment of colic is to comfort the baby and allow the child to work through it and get better. You are describing a progression of conditions and medications that simply does not exist. It sounds more like you read a post by a mother who has a baby with unusual medical needs and have simply drawn your own conclusions. Without being privy to these posts you read, there really is not much more to go on. As for the specific drugs you mentioned, ibuprofen is an anti-inflammatory medication. It is useful for lessening joint inflammation that sometimes accompanies high fevers. Acetaminophen is Tylenol. It is a pain reliever and can also be used to reduce the aches that are associated with the childhood flu.
Both of these drugs, when used properly, are great at easing symptoms in sick children and adults.
There is no long-term risk to using these drugs correctly and temporarily. However, it does not really matter, because the recommended treatment of a fever is, like colic, to comfort the child and let them ride it out.
No doctor worth anything would recommend constantly giving them ibuprofen and Tylenol for a fever.
Okay, here we go! Did the pills work? Oh no, you're dead.
Finally, never meant for children. I do not know what medications you are talking about, but there are many illnesses that can be contracted by children and adults. That is why we have different formulae of medicines tailored to the different body mass and metabolisms of children.
We can't blame the disease because they've always been here and they're always going to be here. We have to blame ourselves.
No, you idiot. Lots of diseases have been eliminated or almost eliminated thanks to vaccines. There's many of them. Polio, smallpox, just to name a few. But we're also noticing now that a lot of illnesses are coming back thanks to people not vaccinating their kids, such as mumps. Yes, mumps is coming back. In 2013, several measles outbreaks occurred around the US, including large outbreaks in New York City and Texas, mainly among groups with low vaccination rates. If vaccination rates drop to low levels nationally, diseases could become as common as they were before vaccines. For instance, more than 15,000 Americans died from diphtheria in 1921, before there was a vaccine. Between the years of 2004 and 2014, however, only 2 cases of diphtheria have been reported to the CDC. Rubella infected in the years of 1964 to 1965 12.5 million Americans. It killed 2,000 babies and caused 11,000 miscarriages. However, ever since 2012, only 15 cases of rubella have been reported to the CDC. This is how effective vaccination is. Let's take another example from Japan. In 1974, about 80% of Japanese children were getting whooping cough vaccine. That year, there were only about 393 cases of whooping cough in the entire country, and not a single death. Then immunization rates began to drop, until only about 10% of children were actually being vaccinated. 5 years later, in 1979, more than 13,000 people got whooping cough and 41 people died. When routine vaccination was resumed, the disease numbers dropped again. I cannot make this clear enough. Vaccinate your f***ing kids.
And my child is 4. I can't blame her, so instead I have to look in the mirror at myself. What am I going to do for my child to raise her up in the way that she should go? And in the way that she should go is a way of health. So in our home, we proactively do preventive care. We do whole food supplements. We eat beets. We choose organic foods. We choose whole foods. We have very little refined sugar, if at all. We didn't do the 1-year birthday cake, let the child eat all they want to. We didn't have any cake. We had fruit. Fruit's God's candy.
And now we have the naturalist fallacy. Avoiding processed foods and refined sugars and carbohydrates is a great thing. Eating too much of these attributes to obesity, heart disease, diabetes, and possibly attention deficit hyperactive disorder. However, organic foods have no measurable benefits compared to standard raised produce. All that is beside the point. Your diet plan will do nothing in the face of preventable diseases. Before the advent of vaccines, our ancestors also lacked access to processed sugary foods. And you know what they found out? Fresh beets and a bowl of strawberries did not help very much in the face of
polio. You are giving your daughter a healthy, well-balanced diet.
Terrific! She'll leave a well-proportioned corpse when she dies of measles, probably taking with her a bunch of babies too young to receive all their vaccines. This is a side point, but do you not find it hilariously ironic that she credits God for making tasty fruits when all the fruits she enjoys are man-made results of generations of artificial selection and hybridization? Would she be praising God if she was trying to survive on the barely edible wild-type fruits, most of which required preparation and cooking to get any nutritional benefit at all? Hell, some of the most common fruits we take for granted cannot survive without direct human intervention and would go extinct within a few years at most if humans were removed from the planet.
This is the double-edged sword of living in a protected, privileged society. After generations of being protected from famine, disease, and malnutrition, she takes for granted the advancements that she is privileged to every day. She has been so well taken care of by our first world lifestyle that she has become completely oblivious to what science and technology have given her and instead only sees the problems that occur when people overheat or overuse medicine. And did you seriously throw a birthday party with no cake? Eating sugary treats regularly causes a lot of medical issues, sure, but there's nothing wrong with an occasional treat, especially on a special occasion. Treats are something to look forward to enhance a celebration. A once-in-a-while cake is not going to hurt her. What are you going to do on Halloween? Make her throw out her trick-or-treating candy while she cries over her bowl of grapes? Are you going to punish her if you find her friend shared a cookie with her? In the words of Dr. House,
Give the kid a damn ice cream cake.
So that's what we do in our family. And it's worked. Our child's 4, and she's had a couple of the small childhood illnesses, like roseola. But when those things come along, we've done all that we can preventive, and then we go into how can we care for our child during. So when she gets a fever, I don't give her ibuprofen, because fevers are there for a reason.
Yes, it's not always necessary to chemically reduce a fever. In fact, any competent doctor would not recommend using medications to reduce a fever unless it is dangerously high, because a fever is part of how our bodies treat infections. Depending on the symptoms, heating pads or ice packs are a great non-medicated substitute for fever ache relief. But I am curious, what do you use instead?
So instead, we use homeopathy.
What the fuck did you just say? The fuck did you just say? Can you believe this, JR? 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 Are you...
Happy, happy, joy, joy, 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 joy.
Now, homeopathy is a tool that you use to aid the body in getting over its own illnesses. It's not there to mask it, and it's not there to fix it. It's there to protect, preserve the body, and to promote healing. And that's what we do. And every time a fever or an illness or a cold is run through our family, we're stronger for it. And I can see a developmental growth in my child. I can see her speaking better. I can see her growth and her weight. They add into her life. And that, to me, those are real results. That is real credibility right there.
And to me, that's real results. The fuck is wrong with you? The fuck is wrong with you? Like, how can you say these things? Don't you realize that you're giving your daughter not even actual fucking drugs, but the memory of drugs? If I was a parent, and I hope I am one day, I would never dream of giving my child anything but what has been proven to work. Now, you may not like drugs, okay, and that's fine. You can have your opinion. But as a parent, it's irresponsible to not give your kid what has been proven to work. You good, JR?
I'm good.
Cool.
And it usually seems to be that only when a child is injured do the parents then realize it wasn't the best choice for their family. Nobody wants to play Russian roulette. And in a sense, unless you know for sure that your child will be 100% safe, do you want to play that game?
Oh God, the irony. Wow, how can anyone be so deluded and backwards? This is how spoiled and sheltered anti-vaxxers are. They legitimately have no idea how precarious our lavish modern first world civilization can be. Our safe and pampered society is balanced on a razor's edge, held up only by the science that grew out of compassion to the suffering and our fear of a miserable death. In just a few short generations, we have become completely blind to the ravages the untamed natural world can unleash upon us. Oh, if you only knew how easy it would be for a sufficiently virile pathogen to overturn life as we know it and send us sprawling back into a world of disease, pestilence, and famine. But you do not. You are so ignorant of history and science and the good medicine has done for you that you stubbornly cast it off. It is as if you were on board the Titanic but refused to board a lifeboat because there is a chance the wood could give you a splinter.
There is no scientific evidence that crystals and gemstones are able to treat ailments based off their color and chemical make.
Yeah, but it's like, what else is healing us? Certainly not science, so.
Ooh, shots fired at science!
This is Clara. She's 4 years old, and she is my vaccine-free child. She is the epitome of love, and affection, and understanding, and health. Health.
Ah, yes. This is the other, more cultish aspect of the anti-vaccine movement. They look at vaccinated children as contaminated with scary chemicals that make them dirty, weaker, and sickly, while their unvaccinated counterparts are strong and pure. It is a creepy and disturbing obsession that has no basis in fact. The only difference between a person who develops antibodies from surviving an illness and a person who is vaccinated against the illness is the latter did not have to suffer through said illness and possibly incur permanent damage after a lot of unnecessary suffering. I am pleased your child has not yet encountered one of the many miserable and life-threatening diseases she could have been protected from. But the truth is, your daughter is not the epiphany of health, but a victim of your own foolishness.
Ah, that's so bright. Oh, that's brighter. Come on, turn it down. Turn it down. Ah. Ooh, this thing is bright. Ah. My neighbors probably think I'm crazy. Alright. No. There we are. That's different. Oh. I'm good. Ah! That is so uncomfortable!
Why did I wait to do this until a winter storm in Michigan?